not an IQ problem. It's not an access to information problem. It is, can you face reality? It's the psychological test. Can you face reality and deal with it? One of the ways out of cognitive dissonance is to change your mind. That is one of the rarest things that happen when people are triggered into cognitive dissonance, but at least it does offer an opportunity. We can go forward together even though we disagree, even about fundamental things. That's really what they were saying. It's like literally vibes. But Bitcoiners have understood that for a long time. Bitcoin, of course, is a psychological commodity. And we've been seeing this contrast. That has been the game to a lot of us Bitcoiners. Like, what do the credentialists and the people who really believe in data and economics and the Keynesians? Bitcoin Standard looks like it's waiting in the wings to take over the central organizing principle of our entire psychological space, and all the good news.
Thanks so much. And hi, Nolan. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
This is my second time on your show, and 6 months since I was here last. And the Fiat apocalypse is progressing, much as we discussed last time. And the Bitcoin Standard looks like it's waiting in the wings to take over the central organizing principle of our entire psychological space, and all the good news.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you follow the news and when you follow like what's kind of unfolding. It's almost it's sometimes hard for Bitcoiners to grasp how far we've come, because especially if you like watch podcasts every single week, if you watch the news every single week, it's like you kind of get that bias that you like. It's the same thing if you have a small nephew and you see him every day, you're like, oh, like he gets bigger. But if you haven't seen him for like 4 years and all of a sudden like he came from like small to like here, and you're like, oh shit, like he got really tall. And the same thing is kind of happening with Bitcoin. If you zoom out just like 5-6 years, like so much has been happening, but you don't really see it when you're like in the day to day. It was like, oh yeah, like a little bit progress here, a little bit progress here. But like if you zoom out, you're like, oh shit, like what's happening here?
True, it is. You don't notice the course of time when you're stuck just debating about knots versus core every day and all these things that consume Bitcoiners. But just beyond what consumes us in the everyday, indeed, it looks like a lot of growth has happened, and it's amazing. I mean, I even look at this Nobel Prize that was given out yesterday in economics, the fake Nobel Prize, the one that goes to the fake science of economics. And if you didn't notice what they described yesterday, basically they said, how can you tell which economy is innovative? And they're like, you need useful information. Well, okay. Oh, way to go, geniuses. But then they get down into the details, and really, I saw a lot of people on the internet summarizing what they said. Now, it wasn't just so boring as useful information, even though those were the exact words they used to describe what this Nobel Prize was about. But they talked about having useful information. They talked about having institutions. They talked about having all these things that work in coordination to create the pretext for innovation economy. And you had a bunch of Bitcoiners out there saying, so it's vibes. So like what you're saying, Econo, is just vibes. Like you're capitulating here, it's vibes. And that's really what they were saying. It's like literally vibes. But Bitcoiners have understood that for a long time. Bitcoin, of course, is a psychological commodity. And we've been seeing this contrast. That has been the game to a lot of us Bitcoiners. Like, what do the credentialists and the people who really believe in data and economics and the Keynesians, what world are they perpetuating with this worldview, with this vibe, versus Bitcoiners, where we've understood for a long time that it is literally our optimism, our ability to believe in this better future and to drag us there. I was joking about it on my show yesterday, that these guys winning the Nobel Prize kind of confirms what a lot of Bitcoiners thought in the early days, where it's like, okay, there's probably only one way to fix the world, and we have to completely change the financial system. And most Bitcoiners are like, okay, yeah, that's true. I agree. So, well, it looks like I'm free on weekends. I could probably, do this. And Bitcoiners literally, with the vibes of optimism, gave up a couple of weekends 10 years ago and launched this entire industry. And here we are, where even the Nobel Prize winning economists have to kind of admit that the structures they talked about that guarantee this innovative economy are exactly what we've been saying is the economy for a long time. This is an Austrian school type of win that these guys got, admitting that it is this literally psychological space that is required to be fertile in order for innovation to happen. It's not IQ, it's not the quality of the schools, it's all none of those things. Although those things are important, it is in the end the vibes. And so Bitcoiners have been in this game of vibe sessions to get ourselves into this position for a decade now, more for some people. And here we are at the cusp of arguing about strategic reserves. It looks like a new financial system is being rumored with what we saw in Argentina and America sort of joining up in the way they have. We're seeing from Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and the way they're treating the Federal Reserve. I said at the beginning of the year on the show last time that the number one story of the year in America was the subordination of the Federal Reserve to the Treasury. And that continues to be one of the big stories. Even yesterday, you had to have Jerome Powell say explicitly he's not even going to comment. He can't even talk about Bitcoin because of this whole literally psychological vibes that we're talking about. He can't admit it's even there because the debasement trade that everyone is now popularizing and talking about extensively on Twitter and the internet is reality, and he can't face it. And that's what we're seeing across the board. There's a whole bunch of people at this point where the news coming in every single day is steering us towards this idea that the fiat currencies around the world are all being rolled up. All the various national Ponzi's are going to be rolled into the US dollar Ponzi. And it looks like this whole idea that Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time, that the financial fiat apocalypse is upon us, and Bitcoin will be able to hopefully gather the whole system at the right time and reorient and reorganize everything around sound money and those psychological principles. So amazing couple of months. A subordinated Federal Reserve, ascendant Treasury in America. It's a big change.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, there are so many things in there, but the main thing for me is kind of seeing, I mean, the debasement trade was really interesting for me also. I actually looked at the Google Trends. And I don't know if you've done that, but like debasement has kind of flatlined since 2012 and now has gone up like to 100% where it was in 2012 last time with, I think, some silver story back in the day. And so this was kind of interesting to see, okay, debasement. Okay, what is this? It's like what Bitcoin is kind of talking about since like 15, 16 years now. And then I see like we have the Indian ad in the Indian Times with like, this is not a gold ad. That's like an ad for how much Bitcoin you can, how much Bitcoin you get for gold. And then like the treasury company is like the president's family buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. Like it's kind of unreal for me, where the mainstream is like, oh, are they getting now that printing money is a problem and that we need a solution? And yeah, we haven't even touched that gold is like at like an absolute all-time high and flying around at
Silver.
like what 4,200 or something like that. It's kind of crazy. Is this kind of the starting of where mainstream is getting the problem and even the solution?
Yeah, I mean, they don't 100%. I mean, they're not even discussing this stuff. They're just putting their heads in the sand. That's why Jerome Powell had to say he won't discuss Bitcoin anymore or gold. He says, oh, no, inflation is because of supply and demand. Yes, supply of the money. Supply of the money. And so he literally yesterday in that address had to admit he's just putting his head in the sand. You're seeing that across the board. Look what they're doing in the EU. Right? You've got all this political schism in the EU between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. You see Viktor Orban saying, no way are they going to let the euro come around. Or was it Poland? I forget which one of them, but they basically said, we're not doing this. This is not happening. You see Obama try to get engaged in European politics. He's trying to go out and say that Poland and Orban, they're strong men. You know, he's trying to come and do the strong man thing. And again, that's just ignoring what's happening in America, ignoring all the discoveries about the Obama administration, just how evil they were, just how much they had already co-opted the American political system and how much they had denigrated the political system again. And they can't talk about it. They can't talk about the Russia collusion stuff that went on in America for years. They're not talking about any of the spying and wiretapping of the president, all of the illegal raids and arresting of political opponents. They're trying to do this thing now where they're warning Americans And Republicans, if Trump goes after his political enemies, they're trying to say, oh, be careful, we'll do the same to you. And again, it's just cognitive dissonance. It's just people with broken brains not admitting what's actually happening. And, I don't like seeing political prosecutions, but in the case of Trump, he's going after the people that went after him. And so in that case, I don't care. I mean, why would I care if literal criminals like James Comey, who even said 8647, kill him in seashells or something, who clearly was perjured in front of the Congress, lied, opened up wiretaps on a political opponent, and all of these stories that you're seeing, the only reaction people have is to try to warn you. But that's a form of cognitive dissonance. We're seeing, just like we think of the economy as a psychological engine. That's what I liked about this Nobel Prize win this week, is they admit the economy is psychological. That's a step forward for the Austrian worldview, and that they're not trying to, say that innovation is because of some tax rebate. Like, everyone tried to put Silicon Valley in a bottle, to put lightning in a bottle around the world. We're going to make an innovation zone. We're going to make Silicon Valley in our country. And it never worked. It never worked. It didn't matter if they tried it in Oslo or Sweden. It was never an IQ problem. All the high IQ countries tried it, and it didn't work out for them. It just didn't work out. It wasn't that. It was a series of conditions that Austrian school people will recognize as the ability to have an optimistic idea of the future, secure commercial relationships to make that thing happen. And that's the fertile ground where this innovation really comes from. And that's what we're seeing in America anyway now, that a whole group of people had to deny these facts, just like we've seen Keynesians for a long time try to explain innovation as like, oh, you need some kind of tax incentive and that'll do it. That'll get everybody to get all excited about innovating stuff. This never works. Everyone tried it. And so we're seeing that we're more and more understanding that the world is and the economy is psychological, that it's a step in the right direction for Bitcoiners. And we're seeing the byproduct of it on the other side. When you can't face reality, when you can't face the truth, you have to continue to try to make the world make sense, because cognitive dissonance is really when the ideas you're keeping in your head don't mesh with reality. And so the brain, instead of going through the hard work of reorienting itself, telling yourself a different story, learning a new narrative for the world around you, you'll break out into one of a few ways of doing things we saw with Jerome Powell. It's to ignore, right? You just don't talk about it. So that's one way cognitive dissonance is dealt with. You can diminish the importance of something. Oh, you see it today with the debasement trade. I saw Joe Weisenthal, the Bloomberg analyst. He has this Odd Lots podcast. He was out in 2019 doing the media tour when the original repo rumble began, and was telling all the Bitcoiners, oh, you Bitcoiners, the repo is technical. You don't get it. You're so dumb. You Bitcoiners, you're so stupid. And I went on legacy media in that time. I was living in New York at the time, and I was still with CoinDesk. So if Bitcoin went up or Bitcoin went down, or if it got hacked, they would call me, and I would go on Squawk Box and CNN and all these networks. And they brought me on to talk about the Joe Weisenthal thing. I brought him to a Bitcoin event that November to debate all this stuff. And of course, he could barely do it. And what I said at that time in 2019, and if there was such a thing as an honest media and honest awards and all that, CoinDesk would have won whatever, the Pulitzer or whatever the big awards you can win in media are, because we were the only news outlet in the world that was talking about the 2019 repo market. And people like Joe Weisenthal said, oh, I'm so sorry, you stupid Bitcoiners. You don't get it. And I said at the time in 2019, you can go back and check the video, you can check the tape. I went on these shows and I said, I don't know about reverse repo that much. What I do know is this is a sign, and we had to follow. We had built all these machines at CoinDesk, all these bots that would help us identify mischief in the Federal Reserve or the SEC. We just had ways of going into databases and finding information because it was relevant to us. If there was a debasement type trade going on in America, that was relevant to Bitcoin. So we were keyed into that kind of stuff. So we were saying this is something. And on those TV shows at the time, I said very clearly, if I'm wrong, right? Then no problem. But if I'm right, you're going to see a huge print of money within the next 6 months, because what was going on in 2019 is not sustainable. I didn't know anything about COVID, but I was right, and Joe Weisenthal was completely wrong. And there was never any acknowledgement about Bitcoiners being right in 2019. Everybody just forgot about it. And here we are again. And Joe Weisenthal's on TV today saying, I don't like it being defined as the reverse, the debasement trade. It's like he's not into the style of calling it that. He was wrong 6 years ago. If there was any accountability for journalism in the world, we would all acknowledge he's retarded. He's retarded. He got the biggest story wrong. He's still sitting here 6 years later saying, oh, gosh, guys, it's just, I'm not down with calling it that. Everybody in the world knows what's going on, and everybody is doing it, and he's still going to sit there. And this is just cognitive dissonance. This is just lazy psychological activity. He's got to reduce the importance of it. He's got to say, it's not it's just technical, like he said 6 years ago. You just don't understand. We get it. Trust me, we get it. We understand what's going on. If we're right, we're going to see a huge print and Bitcoin go through the roof. Who do you think's going to be right? Is it Joe Weisenthal? So one day we got to make sure. That's why I love all these podcasts. That's why I'm a big believer in the 40-hour podcast watching for Bitcoiners, because as long as there's still people like Joe Weisenthal running his trash bag, mental illness spreading podcast around the world, we don't have enough Bitcoin podcasts. As long as there's someone stupid putting this trash out, going on about I don't like the style of the debasement trade. Oh, you don't understand, Bitcoiners. You're so dumb. I'm a podcaster. I get it. Then we're going to be in this condition. So the good news is lots of brains are getting broken every single day. And each one of those broken brain incidences is a good moment for Bitcoiners, because Bitcoin orange pilling cannot be done by nagging. I've seen many Bitcoiners get frustrated. I told my family 1,000,000 times. I told my friends, why don't they get it? Just like I've said, it's the same as the innovation zones. It's not an IQ problem. It's not an access to information problem. It is, can you face reality? It's the psychological test. Can you face reality and deal with it? And Bitcoiners have been dealing with reality for a long time, and that's a huge advantage in our case. And that's where we have this opportunity now, because when people are in this state of cognitive dissonance, when they're searching, sure, they double down. But one of the ways out of cognitive dissonance is to change your mind. And that is one of the rarest things that happen when people are triggered into cognitive dissonance. But at least it does offer an opportunity, just like when people noticed COVID, right, that the words coming out of the government weren't really matching what was happening on the ground or what they were perceiving. It did spark an awakening of a certain amount of people. And we all felt that in Bitcoin. We felt them coming to Bitcoin. I heard 1 million people give me their Bitcoin origin story. And it was, COVID came, COVID. That was a big deal. And what we're seeing right now with this inflation and with this, the bank system really falling apart in America and the debasement trade really becoming mainstream, we have this great opportunity now to orange pill people, because everyone is being triggered into a state of cognitive dissonance. It's kind of like the underbelly of a dragon. It's like the weak part is exposed right now because of the amount of broken brains that are occurring. And each one of them is a new opportunity for us. And Bitcoin, mimetically, you can use the Bitcoin memes as a kind of payload that you can drop into those broken brains and start sparking. Like the 21 million one works perfectly right now, which is one of the great Bitcoin memes out there. The 21 million, very simple, very easy to understand, much easier than everything we heard from Jerome Powell yesterday, trying to explain what's going on with the interest on reserves and the quantitative tightening that he was talking about yesterday is over and blah, blah, blah. Very complicated stuff. Much easier, 21 million. And that's a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, there was a lot in there. I want to touch back on later on the IQ thing, because there's a funny story there. You probably know about it. But then before, I just want to make sure, because I never heard about the 2019 repo market.
Yeah.
It might
That
be
was
a European thing, but like US, right? This
it was a
was
US
that?
thing. And what it meant was and it's related to the quantitative tightening from yesterday, because that's what caused the original way that they were paying interest on T-bills or cash parked at the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve was paying interest overnight on the money coming back and forth. So you would park money at the Federal Reserve. Instead of providing liquidity, you would park it at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve would give you the overnight interest rate. And at the time, it was only like 25 billion they were parking overnight. So it's just the overnight on 25 billion, not a huge number. But that turned into 2 trillion parked overnight during the height of the repo market and the way they managed to do the print during the COVID pandemic. And then after, with bad girl Yellen, the way Janet Yellen tapered that down till today is she basically got that 2 trillion to be given back to the banks to provide liquidity. And that's what caused this unwinding, because that's almost out now. Everything they built up is almost gone, which is why they have to go to they have to stop quantitative tightening and start paying that overnight repo again, because that's going to be the only thing that they have. It's a type of defibrillator. What I saw already then is the banks weren't profitable, and their main trick of lending people money to buy houses wasn't working. And it worked later, but in 2019, it was starting to gum up again. And so they were just parking money at the Federal Reserve in the most brain dead way you can make money as a bank. Just give it to the Federal Reserve. They pay you overnight and then do it again the next day, do it again the next day, do it. And it was rolling over every single day. So it was millions of dollars, not a huge amount, millions of dollars being created by deposits of the commercial banks at the Federal Reserve and swapping those for T-bills or whatever. When you do a repo transaction, it doesn't create a debtor-creditor relationship. It's just a swap with a simple amount of money thrown in to make it make sense. And so the futures part of that contract is not a debt. It's just the cost of doing business. So it's not the same as when you deposit at a commercial bank and it creates the debtor-creditor relationship. It's a straight swap, and with a bit of money to incentivize the deal. So the commercial banks weren't losing on the deal. What was happening is they were being subsidized by the Federal Reserve to park massive amounts of money with the Federal Reserve. And that was a way for them to make money in the most stupid and brain dead way you could possibly make money. Just deposit money at the Federal Reserve and not lend it out for commercial or industrial reasons or anything. Just park it. And that's what they did with all of that liquidity that they were provided during the Great Print, is they just kept parking it at the Federal Reserve. It was that dumb.
And so even without COVID, there would have come like a huge print, as it always comes at some point.
Well, that's where you should have given rewards or awards to Bitcoin journalists already back then. I didn't know anything like COVID, but I was saying already, there's got to be a huge print to get over this, because this is a sign that the banks can't make money in the way the world works right now. And if they can't make money, then what's going to happen to this Federal Reserve system? It started to become up in the air. The math didn't make sense anymore. Psychologically, it didn't make sense anymore. There was a huge unknown on the horizon, and Bitcoiners, that's all we were doing. We didn't know what was going to happen. We said, this is a cliff and it's a major problem. And Balaji was talking about it, and all kinds of Bitcoiners were talking about it, because look, we've been selling quantitative easing as a reason to buy Bitcoin, the debasement trade, for 10 years already, more or less. We've been talking about that. And so because it was our reality coming to fruition, it made important sense for us to underline that we were right. And that's really where we're at. That's what I liked about the award being given, the Nobel Prize being given the other day, is that truthfully, when we make predictions, the predictions are really important to underline how accurate your worldview was when you made the prediction. If you make a prediction and it goes wrong, you've got to adjust your thinking from the time you made the prediction. That's why, even with what Trump did in the Middle East this weekend, go back to the predictions about Trump from 2016. Oh, he's Hitler. Oh, it's World War III. So he's only in it for himself. He only wants it for him. Now that wasn't my prediction. My prediction is sure, yeah, he probably likes getting praise. He likes awards. You can't compliment Trump enough, right? He'll just always want more of that stuff. But that doesn't explain why he's doing things, right? Like sometimes you do great things, sure, to get the reward, but it's not like stealing a bit of money off of Russia or launching a meme coin. Like this was world peace we were talking about this week. And so my prediction about Trump from the very beginning was, yeah, sure, that's all true. He might like the praise and the awards and all that stuff, but he's got skills that no one else has and can probably solve peace quicker than anyone. It's the reason why I was originally into Donald Trump from the very beginning. I saw him on Larry King, or my dad saw him on Larry King way before he became president. And it was there to talk about the Middle East. And he just was bringing the New York deal maker attitude, like the real best part of New York City. He was bringing that attitude of why can't they make a deal? Why can't they make a deal about the Middle East and all that stuff? Like it's just a deal. That's all you have to do. And I never forgot that. And when he decided to run, I had already given up on politics. I'd said I was already 100% in on Bitcoin in 2015. But I saw him because I had come from politics. I was working in executive branch politics before all of this. I worked for the Prime Minister of Canada and had seen exactly how the sausage was being made and was disgusted. In Canada at the time, it was before Trump. There was already, they were the Nazis. We were the Nazis back then. You want to cut funding for arts, Nazi, right? It was like all that crazy stuff. So I thought at the time, before Trump even came around, that the system, the fiat system, was irredeemable because money and the media had more or less colluded and probably were just going to keep spinning the same types of Joe Weisenthal responses, just cognitive dissonance, just ignore the facts, reduce their importance, exaggerate the importance of little things, just to avoid reality. And when I saw Trump, I said, this is someone who can actually break that mold. He's so different. And my prediction originally from Trump was he can bring great amounts of peace. And here we are, whatever years later, 10 years later, and Trump has succeeded in that. My prediction was correct. And all the people that said he was going to warmonger, all the people that said he would do this are just flat out wrong. Like they were wrong about everything. And so this idea, just like the Nobel Prize winner says, your ability to predict is part of that, what they called they didn't call it vibes, but this idea that there is something motivational to work towards. There is an optimistic future coming. It's one of the things that is really, you have to get that stuff right if your worldview when you made those predictions is going to be tested. And Bitcoiners have a great track record. We are on the timeline that Max Kaiser and all the Bitcoiners have said was going to play out. 10 years ago, we already made these predictions. And so that's one of the good things about this model of predicting, testing worldviews, and understanding the economy as a psychological engine and measuring it that way is that we don't have to adjust our worldview every day like the people experiencing cognitive dissonance. We don't have to deny the importance of this or exaggerate the importance of that. We're able to take the world as it is, and we don't have to go through the constant cognitive dissonance reflex in order to move forward. We don't have to readjust our worldview every time we get everything wrong because we get everything right. That's a big advantage.
Yeah, this past week with Trump was really interesting because I've seen how the mainstream media in Austria, so our European mainstream media, is watching at those scenes, and they really tried hard to find the smallest bad thing on that. It's like, oh, he got there and he just got himself praised all the time. I'm like, yeah, like. And like he deserves that.
It was such Trump theater. That thing in Egypt was just such Trump theater. I can't believe it's like when he brings people to his office, like Cyril Ramaphosa or whatever, the South African guy, and they play all the videos of like kill the white, and he was like, I didn't know. And he keeps, Zelensky was the first one he brought in, and you don't have the cards, and all that was hilarious. And, he gets people into these, he's a TV producer. I mean, what are these people thinking? And then he goes to Egypt. He gets the whole world stage up there with him. That none of them have anything to do because he did everything already. They're just there listening to him. and he gets to ad lib, and he's like dismissing the English guy, and he's like, where he doesn't even know the Prime Minister of England's name. Where's England? Where's England? He said, where's England? You know? And then he gets into, and this is again where the cognitive dissonance comes from, and where I think Bitcoiners have a tremendous advantage as well. I don't know if you know much about this stuff, because this is what Trump was doing yesterday on that stage, or 2 days ago. It was what we call K-Fabe in America. You probably definitely don't know what that is. K-Fabe.
Absolutely
you ever
not.
heard of that?
No.
No. Okay. K-Fabe. Again, to get to the psychological world, it comes from wrestling. The wrestling like Hulk Hogan and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know all
Rock
that?
and all.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan. You've heard of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
He's the one that died.
He died this summer. Yeah,
right?
he's the guy who came to Trump's inauguration last year and pulled his shirt off and said, who gave, let Hulkamania reign again, right? That guy. So where this all comes from is wrestling is a type of art form, right? It's not, it's one of the biggest, let's say it, black-pilling events of my life was being a kid in the 90s and listening in the 80s and 90s and listening to boomers tell me that wrestling was fake. And like I didn't know, like they were teaching me something about wrestling not being real fighting. And every kid knew that. Like every kid was like, yeah, I'm aware it's not fake, but that's all they could ever say. So that's fake. So here's what K-Fabe is, because it's important in this case. K-Fabe is a wrestling term that wrestlers use amongst themselves. And it is an acknowledgement that if you play to archetypes, literally Jungian archetypes, right? So it's a deep psychological resonance to what they noticed. This is why there is wrestling. What they noticed all the way back in the 60s and 70s when wrestling was still coming up like a circus. It was always a bit like circus, like traveling regional groups, and they all amalgamated under the big WWF, which is now the WWE, with the help of a French man, the Andre the Giant, who moved here and helped consolidate with Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon, his wife is in Trump's cabinet. She's the head of the Department of Education there to destroy it, Linda McMahon. So it's her husband who created this wrestling league. And in this traveling circus, the wrestlers understood something called K-Fabe, which was the psychological hypnotism, the type of hypnotism that the fans would get drawn into during a match, all knowing it's fake, but the K-Fabe reliance on archetypes of heel and babyface. So the heel is the bad guy, the babyface is the good guy. And because at the time they didn't speak to the audience, they had to physically, like clowns, do exaggerated movements and exaggerated acting on stage, but they noticed the effect, the hypnotic effect it had on the crowd. And it's a willingness to be hypnotized. So the people who enjoy wrestling enter the frame of, I'm going to get hypnotized today by this heel and babyface archetype. And it's a way to tell stories. It's a way to get people to have an idea on their own. So instead of me telling you that's the good guy and that's the bad guy, there were ways of acting. Like a heel would always brag about himself, right? He would always like kiss his muscles and the fans would start to boo. And the baby face was a good guy. He'd protect there was just ways of signaling, and they would turn the wrestlers in their career. It's one of the most famous moments. Hulk Hogan turned heel in the 1990s and became a villain. And everybody knew it was a script. Everybody. I mean, there was no way you could believe the turn that he had was at all real, but everybody invests in it psychologically as if it's 100% real, including myself. I was like, oh, wow, Hulk Hogan, the storyline's changing. It's like a soap opera, right? It's like those types of shows. And so you should go check the tape on when Hulk Hogan turns heel. You'll never see an audience go that angry and crazy in your life. It got actually dangerous, because the people whipped themselves up so much. He was the ultimate babyface. And because he adopted this archetype heel, the archetype heel, the K-Fabe was so strong that everyone just garbage and anger and all this kind of stuff. So K-Fabe and this ability to create good guys and bad guys is Trump's technique of persuading people. Just look at his fight with Elon Musk. I don't know to what extent it's real. So wrestling, some of these fights are sort of real, but the wrestling match is not so scripted that they know exactly what's going to happen. They get into the K-Fabe as they're doing it, as they're live performing the fight. And the more the audience gets drawn in to the K-Fabe, the better the match, the longer they run it. The referee is there to make the K-Fabe call, right? So when Trump, for example, got into the fight with Elon Musk, right? Everyone was excited. And then Elon says he's in the Epstein files. And remember what the original fight was between Elon and Trump. It was about the big, beautiful bill and government spending. What was the result in the K-Fabe wrestling way of those two fighting? You've never had more attention on End the Fed. You've never had more attention on how much money is too much money. How much can we spend? Are we going bankrupt? What's the story on all of this? So that was K-Fabe in action. You would never have had a conversation in America about End the Fed to the extent that we did because of the very wrestling light fight that Trump had with Elon. It was probably a little bit real, but the way they perform it, the way Trump does all of this stuff, and that's what Trump did the other day when he was in Egypt with all those leaders, is he was using lines like, some of them are my friends. I won't tell you who, but I don't like some of them. Maybe I will tell you. And it's all wrestling. So now you get everyone on the internet. Who does he not like? Was it Macron? Look, he shook Macron's hand too much. Oh, look at that. The German guy, all these stories. Trump is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, by the way. He is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame because he used to participate in wrestling. He's a fan, right? So Trump was a big wrestler. He would do WrestleMania storylines. He fought Vince McMahon. He's been stone cold stunned. He's been body slammed. He's been all of that stuff. But Trump's aesthetic, Trump's understanding of how to persuade people goes deep into wrestling hypnosis and kayfabe. And he can redefine reality using that. And that is really the same as Bitcoiners. It is a type of self-hypnosis to understand. It's what we all had to undergo to understand the world is a psychological engine. The economy is a psychological engine. People are persuaded, not necessarily by IQ. Again, a lot of smart people have never done the math on the Federal Reserve. They only did it when Elon Musk said Trump is in the Epstein files. And suddenly, bang, everyone was like, what? It's because of the bill. You had the same thing with Trump and Iran. Everyone's saying, oh, Trump is under the thumb of Israel. How much is appropriate? I don't know what the answer to that is, but you had the conversation that you were never able to have before. And so kayfabe is used to persuade people because it looks like they have the idea themselves. It's a type of hypnosis that draws people in and gets them to identify the storyline themselves and who they identify with and associate with instead of being told. Because that's where a lot of the Bitcoin, that's where this cognitive dissonance thing really takes shape with Bitcoin, because we can't sit here and nag people. That doesn't work. You should learn about Bitcoin, right? When people are in these distressed psychological states because they don't know what the answer is, they're having cognitive dissonance, and suddenly this moral play happens in front of their eyes with good guys and bad guys, and it's very easy to understand. You get drawn in and you start recreating your worldview according to the kayfabe. And Trump did a great job of that yesterday or 2 days ago in Egypt, basically just showing you that Western Europe is very stupid and useless. And he used wrestling to persuade people. Because again, how many people would, if you went in and said, oh, Trump doesn't like Macron or Trump doesn't like Keir Starmer, maybe, you'd have to sort of bring facts and make an argument and people would still resist. But if you make a mystery like Trump did, some of them I like, some I don't. I'll tell you, maybe I won't. Bang, everyone's like, what does he mean? Who is it? Right? And now you have a conversation about who he likes and who he doesn't. It's wrestling. It's kayfabe.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
That's amazing. I've never heard about that, but it makes a lot of sense. And I love, I think one thing is for sure, like both Trump and Elon both understand attention very good. I mean, Elon is a master in that, like, and Trump also, like, clearly. And this night, I still remember, like, it's almost like the day, that something like tragic really happened. It almost like draws you in when when I opened Twitter. And for me, it was like, I think 10 or 11 PM at night. So like, it was like kind of late where I saw it and I was like, oh, I cannot go to sleep now. Like, I literally just wanted to last times check Twitter, like lay back and just like go in there. But it's so interesting. And then there were live tweets happening from Elon Musk. He tweeted like 5-6 times within an hour, and you're like, oh, like refreshing his page and like, what is going to happen? Like, is he tweeting now something? Even though it does not really have any impact currently on your life. Like, you couldn't care less. Like, why do you care that those people not like have some fight over it? Like, even if, like, no matter what the background is there, you can just go to sleep, and probably in 5 years, nobody cares. But you care in that moment very much. So I love how you describe it. And like, I was very drawn into that. Like, I sat there, like my girlfriend already slept, and I was like, oh gosh, what's going to happen next? Like, oh gosh, did Trump say something like, oh, JD Vance was on the podcast the same day. Oh, Fiat was interviewing him. Like, you go down those crazy rabbit holes all of a sudden. Like, it really drew me in, and probably like 90% of Twitter people.
And you saw it, Trump did a replay of that with the Federal Reserve as well, when he brought the Federal Reserve chairman. Remember, they did a tour of the building?
Yeah, with the paper and the meme then.
It's like making him put his glasses on. It's all wrestling. It's wrestling. You can't. If Trump would have tried to explain that to you, it would have sounded stupid and uninteresting. But he goes to a building, makes up the number. It was like 2 billion, but he makes 3 billion. That's what gets Powell to get sucked in. It's from your own numbers. Trump gets all fake. It's completely fake. Right? It was like a building they built 10 years ago. I mean, you could argue it's real, but it was pure Trump theater again, just like the thing Peace 2025 and all these leaders. It's pure wrestling. And then he brings the guy there, and he goes, "I have a little," and then that's when he gives the line, "I have a little reserve," right? "I have a little reserve." That's what the Fed chair said. "I have a little reserve," because he was telling them how much money they're losing and could they pay their bills? Could they pay for the construction? He even asked them, and he gets the Fed to say he has a little reserve. It's too good. If you don't understand the world is these archetypes, and that's an advantage that Bitcoin has, because we can tell our story outside of the parameters of facts and figures. It's reality, and reality, just like those economists who won the Nobel Prize described, right? What's the reality of economic growth and innovation? It's vibes. It's vibes, and vibes are K-Fabe. They're someone who's either at peace with reality or who's struggling with reality. We know what struggling with reality looks like. It looks like the people who are having trouble with the fiat apocalypse. We see that as Bitcoiners. We made a lot of decisions to not be like them, to accept reality 10 years ago. There's a lot of people coming to those conclusions today. All of Wall Street is coming to that conclusion. You see why Jamie Dimon has capitulated. You see why Larry Fink is at stage 5 of Bitcoin acceptance. He is literally an evangelist now, going out there telling you that debasement trade is real, telling you that you need some form of safety from sovereign risk. So we're progressing psychologically in the best way I think possible, and getting a lot of scalps along the way, and a lot of new people who are changing their worldview. They're adapting. They're not putting their head in the sand. They're not doing the ostrich take. They're doing the honey badger take. It's honey badgers versus ostriches, and the people who want to survive and be dexterous and fight back and arm themselves to survive the fiat apocalypse are adjusting accordingly.
Now, this just came in my mind because we talked just very briefly about core versus knots, and I publicly stated that I think we've kind of over emotionalized this whole thing. And it almost came. And when you talked about Trump versus Elon and those like cage fightings and that hypnosis of this, I was like, oh gosh, like, why does this remind me of core versus knots? Like, why does, like, is there anything where you're like, how much is this matter really mattering? And how much is it just, a Bitcoin circus within Bitcoin and kind of Bitcoiners fighting each other?
I will. It is both of those things. I can explain it, but I have a Nazi flag, which I think will get me in trouble in your country, right? Isn't it like completely banned or something?
I have no clue, but
no?
Maybe.
Well, I made a whiteboard, and I'll explain it. I've been using it a lot on the Roxham show. We'll try not to get in trouble with the Nazi stuff. But here's a way of describing this whiteboard. So I make whiteboards. So that's the World War II consensus model that I have there, right? So the World War II consensus model, and then I put Nakamoto consensus on this side. So just remember, this is a scale, right? And you see World War II consensus here. There's money going into the scale. And on one side of the scale, there's all the institutions that banded together to fight in World War II. And then on the other side, you have the Nazis. Here in Nakamoto consensus, I have some superheroes, Tesla, Trump cards, marketplace, and Nakamoto consensus. So I'll explain what all this means and why it's important. And I'll bring it back to your comments about knots and core and why that's very important. So in that model, in the World War II consensus model that I described, what we've got is this consideration, let's say, this worldview that came out of World War II, which was World War II, the defining reset moment for the fiat apocalypse, for the fiat world, not the apocalypse, pardon me, but for the fiat system. And it sided everything in terms of good versus bad. K-Fabe, it's still K-Fabe. They used K-Fabe too. This is a psychological frame that people entered and accepted as a reality, that the Nazis were all evil, which is a fine way to do things, right? He's a perfectly good Satan character in order to define as bad, right? Perfectly great, perfectly applicable. But here's where the problem begins and why we find ourselves in the trouble we find ourselves in today, particularly in Europe. We have the problem in America too. the good side, right? It was good versus evil. That's been reality since the end of World War II. Now, all of the institutions that came together to win World War II, and it was institutions, right? The point of everything we built after World War II, the heavy bureaucracy, all that stuff, right? The French said it explicitly. The French believed, Charles de Gaulle believed, the reason why the French capitulated so easily and lost so easily was their bureaucracy was too weak. Their national institutions were not strong enough to fight against this huge character of Hitler that had come, this megalomaniac that had come. And so he explicitly said, we're going to strengthen our bureaucracy. We're going to make the sciences politique, where all the presidents went to, where they're going to go to l'ENA, the École Nationale d'Administration. They built all these institutions. Every country built these institutions. They built up a heavy bureaucracy. They wanted to stop the great men of history from great and evil men of history from rising again through a form of decentralization, really, right? All these institutions. Now, the original sin and the lie was the good side was made up of communists, Russians, and Americans. And to this day, we've still told the story of World War II in terms of good and evil. All these institutions, the military, academia, NGOs, whatever, they weren't called that back then, but the bureaucracy all together defined the good team. But the sick lie is the good team was half made of communists. And so what ends up happening is when you create the scale, the World War II consensus perpetuated by these institutions had to continue to see the world in terms of good, bad, Nazi, freedom as the dichotomy. But the good side was made up of half communists. So eventually, the lie of letting the communists into the good side, that original lie we told in the 1950s or 40s when this was happening, meant that all these institutions could allow communist flags and communist supporters into them, universities, bureaucracies. None of that became a problem. You can go in your city, I bet, with a communist flag and nobody gives a shit. You can go all around Germany with a communist flag and nobody gives a shit. I can go and protest anywhere in America, nobody gives a shit. I can't go anywhere with a Nazi flag, obviously, for obvious reasons. I'm not trying to support Nazism by any stretch of the imagination. And in fact, I speak a lot against what I'm seeing as this World War II consensus model breaks, right? You're seeing people think the opposite is true, that the Nazis were the good guys and somehow the Jews were evil and it's been a big Jewish conspiracy this whole time. That's the risk of doubting and the collapse of the World War II consensus model. Because now what happened was evil, once the communists occupied a lot of these institutions, it's still good versus evil. So the same freedom-loving American forces that won now get pushed onto the bad side and the Nazi side, even though they're nothing to do with it. The MAGA, think about it. They're telling you that Trump fans are Nazis, but they're giving everybody guns. They want everyone maximum gun holding rights, maximum freedom of speech, maximum all of this stuff. And they're the Nazis. Of course not, right? So that's what happens is that the communists, the good side was shared by opposites. They pushed out one side. Everyone's trying to push the other side out to be the Nazis, right? Because that defines evil in this model. But the World War II consensus model, you can tell it's breaking. You know, the Kanye song, "The Summer Nigga Heil Hitler," is an example to make a joke about Hitler, to start to tear down these World War II consensus extremes. The Superman movie, I brought up this a lot over the summer. I don't know if you saw the Superman movie this summer. The Superman movie, also a subtle psychological sign that things are changing. They changed his family. You know, Superman is a Jewish character, right? He was created by Jewish immigrants to America just before the World War, already in the time of Hitler. And it was about dual loyalties. I mean, he is a character of dual loyalties, Kryptonian and Earth. He uses his power to defend America. He doesn't use it internally. He's Clark Kent, just a normal American internally to America, but he fights at the borders and the margins and the hinterland. They changed in the movie a bit of his story to fit our times, and it really underlines the World War II consensus falling. They made his Kryptonian parents, I'll spoil a bit of the movie, but he had a clip that made him inspired to be Superman that we all know from his Kryptonian parents. Do good, be good, you'll be like a god. They found they decrypted a file in the movie of a broken part of the transmission where they straight up tell him, no, go get a harem, bang all the Earth women and have 1 million kids. really getting into the European and American immigration experience, straight up getting into it. Like, it wasn't a Jewish character anymore. They straight up went with, African, Muslim, rape, all that storyline. And then they changed his parents in America, his American parents. And the story comes to narrative closure. They changed it in a weird way. Instead of being Kansas farmers, which they've always been, Midwestern farmers. Midwesterners speak English like me. They don't speak with a thick accent. They made his parents full-on Southern bumpkins. And in America, codifying the language in the Southern accent means you're dumb, right? That's like K-Fabe for America. You're an idiot if you speak in the South. It's just the way it is. And so they made his parents Southerners. Now, the movie comes to narrative completion when he identifies with the Native American, not Indian or, Aboriginal, but the Southern accented Americans. And that's what comes to make the movie come to completion. He identifies with the American archetype over the Muslim rape gang archetype that his Kryptonian parents had suggested to him. So what we're seeing across the board is this World War II consensus breaking, even in our art, even in our subconscious, it's breaking. That's the Kanye song, that's the Superman movie. We're getting into a deconstruction of this good versus bad because the originals, that's why you hear Hitler all the time now. It's all Hitler, 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 because the model is collapsing, because this ability to use Hitler as the very definition of evil is losing its amplification. Now, again, I believe Hitler is a fine enemy and a fine devil. But unfortunately for reality in the 20th century, he's like maybe the bronze medalist. He's not the worst person of the 20th century. He's just not. If you're going objectively on body count, death, misery, he's on the podium. He's a very good 20th century terrible candidate, but he's nowhere near Stalin or Mao or the communists, not even close. And so the World War II consensus model has all these institutions whose job it is to stop great men of history from coming, to stop Hitler from coming, to stop all of this. But they were infected by communists. The communists have created a destruction of this model. But the good news, and we can understand it in terms of Nakamoto consensus, because the fault tolerance of Nakamoto consensus, we understand what it is. It's 49%. We can handle 49% of nodes being out of whack, and we can still move forward. The World War II consensus is not up to 49%. It's like 20%, 15%. I don't know what it is, but it's not a lot. If you have just a little bit of doubt, just a little bit of debate, the whole architecture comes down. And that's why you're seeing the Fiat apocalypse spit up all of these crazy, incongruous worldviews and points of view, because the World War II consensus model, to frame the world in terms of good versus bad, with the limit of its Fiat information system being capped, the amount of tolerance that it can actually sustain now being bridged. I think we've got the Russians giving JFK files to America today or something that's in the news. So again, this is more World War II consensus type stuff getting melted apart. So here's the Knots versus Core, to bring it back to Knots versus Core and where I think things are going and why I think with the World War II consensus model collapsing. And again, the World War II consensus model, because the fault tolerance is so low, it can't really handle getting too many stupid Joe Weisenthals in the marketplace of ideas. It can't really handle too many Bitcoiners asking questions about reality, asking questions about the financial system, its collusion with the marketing system, the media. Once you ask too many of those questions, that's why the marketing system has to go into overdrive and has to stop the slippage from happening. It has to catch up to the consensus, the fault tolerance of the consensus mechanism. And so that's why it's spitting out constant Hitler references now, because it's breaking. But what I saw from Knots versus Core is where we're headed, and it's very recognizable to the world we used to know. When fault tolerance of the World War II model of good, evil, Nazis, institutions, you don't have to have this whole paradigm in your head in order to have a worldview anymore. You can actually move to a world where we don't have to agree on everything, and Bitcoiners are proving this. We can go forward together even though we disagree, even about fundamental things. Knots versus Core, I agree, it got into some K-Fabe areas and all that, but none of that matters in the end, because realistically, you've got a market And we're going to go back, it looks like anyway, with Bitcoin to the way the world worked before Hitler and the World War II consensus, which is all these institutions that work together to stop great men of history won't be able to do it anymore. And you're going to have Bitcoin and a Nakamoto consensus where we can argue about anything and still move forward. We still have the psychological consistency to be able to have commercial agreements, to push forward, have an economy that works. And the Nakamoto consensus model really underlines, I think anyway, you're already seeing it. I saw there was a story this summer about what's his name in England. He had the podcast, What Bitcoin Did, very famous podcast.
Peter McCormack.
Yeah. They called him the Bitcoin Batman this summer for creating his own police force, right? This is where we're headed. We're headed to a world of, and Elon Musk would be another example, right? It's kind of superhero abilities, jets and rockets and all this kind of stuff. Trump himself got into Bitcoin originally as an NFT card of superheroes, right? So you're getting back to a world where great people just using the market can rise above the state, can rise above all these things. So it's good and bad. You're going to get bad people too that are Bitcoiners. I don't think we can deny that. But Nakamoto consensus allows for us, it's actually a great testament that we can fight like this as intensely as we do and still move forward. Now I understand there's bad blood and people got upset and this and that, but that's why I thought there was a note by NVK, which was just so great about all this. Like, you don't have to upgrade. You can just not bother. You don't have to pay attention to this. And again, that's just this third rail that Bitcoiners always have. You can get heated about the knots guys, heated about the core piece, but you can also just not bother. And that's what's allowing all of this ego death and the stay humble part of stay humble stack sats on a Nakamoto consensus model is going to produce great people, superb people, some evil people for sure, but we can still move forward and get along. We don't have to get caught in this cycle where everyone has to agree about Israel. Everybody has to agree about this. Everybody has to agree about abortion, and everybody has to, we can get beyond that. And so that's what I saw about the knots versus core. It's just proof that Nakamoto consensus is a model to move forward, is starting to show its benefit over the World War II consensus model, because simply the fault tolerance of Nakamoto consensus and reorienting ourselves to the great men of history, great women of history type narrative, which was always how we were run. I mean, it's the best streets in your country were made without a bureaucracy. They were made because of great men and women of history that said, hey, I'm going to build a beautiful road between Salzburg and Vienna, and it's going to be the best, and everyone's going to use it forever. This was not done through taxes. It was not done through institutions. None of that happened. Smart, wealthy, successful people. It would be the same today. I don't know if you have Walmart in Europe or you got Amazon. There's no way Jeff Bezos is letting the streets upon which he delivers Amazon products go to shit. Like a $5 subscription will probably fix all of our roads. All of them. And so we're going to be able to question the usefulness of government, the applicability of government, how much can get done with people just being let off the leash, being super successful. Nakamoto consensus, knots versus core, to me proved that the Bitcoiners that can disagree but still move forward is a huge advantage psychologically over what World War II consensus offers, which is if you don't agree entirely, the fault tolerance of the consensus mechanism breaks down immediately. If two people don't agree that Hitler is the worst thing that ever happened, there is no World War II consensus anymore. And you're getting more and more of that. You're getting more and more people say, well, Hitler was, now I don't like the opposite, right? I don't want to hear about Hitler was right about everything. It's not what happened, right? He was a very evil guy. So that's the worry. Like World War II consensus opposite is not the real thing. Nakamoto consensus, where I don't have to agree with you about Hitler. You can go and believe he's the worst ever. I'm going to keep Stalin as my gold medalist of 20th century murder and killing. He's my winner, right? But it doesn't matter to Bitcoin. Like, what difference would it be to you if, right? So that's how I see the knots versus core. It's actually a huge endorsement of Bitcoin's ability to tolerate different opinions and still move forward.
I'm looking forward to Lugano.
There will be, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a debate with, I think Stephen Livera is the moderator. There is Luke, there's Bitcoin Mechanic on the Knot side, and then there's Jameson Lobb. I forgot the fourth guy that is arguing on that, but like basically two core guys and two Knots guys.
Very cool.
And it's like, I'm so looking forward to it. Not that I like get a new argument out of it. I probably heard everything they will say. But I just want to see how they interact in person and not like, behind the Twitter screen, because it's very different in my opinion. Now, I like, I have so many more topics I want to do to cover, but like, I think I want to have one more thing in there, because I teased it before with IQ. You probably have heard of Young Hong Kim, and he just posted something new today. And I found it so hilarious. And kind of want to get your take on it. I will just quickly read it. Like he is, I think, confirmed by something that he is the highest IQ in the world with 276. And first he came out and said like, oh, like Bitcoin is like smart people have to buy Bitcoin and all of that, before he went on and said like, I will create a second Bitcoin. A lot of Bitcoin actually cheered him on, like rightfully so, because he talked good things about Bitcoin. And now, like he started to say, oh, he will create on Christmas Eve a second Bitcoin, and he will be celebrated as the second Satoshi. And I thought that post is really interesting. Dear everyone, I could never be part of any scam, which is a great way to start a post. I act with full responsibility in the name of Jesus Christ and for my son, Kim. This is why my second Bitcoin will be created to prepare humanity for the second coming of Jesus Christ. How do you look at that guy and the story and this post?
Yeah, I can offer a little bit. So I used to live in South Korea. I lived there for a couple of years, and pretty familiar with the whole country. So I'll say first of all, his IQ trick was like a magic trick. He created the Credentialist Institute that gave himself the IQ number, right? So which I'm which I'm fine with, because all of these groups have done self-reported IQ forever anyway, because IQ, it's like, penis size kind of, like you're not really going to get an accurate measure. And I loved Trump did this years ago where they were giving the IQ of all the presidents, but Trump self-reported his, because all IQ is self-reported. And they actually had to, like, it was one of these listicles from years ago, and it was like actually Trump at the end. He was like a 180 IQ. Which is probably true. I don't know. But I have been, once I saw that Trump got away with it, I said, oh, I'm going to start self-reporting my own IQ. I only stopped self-reporting my IQ of 180 when it became aesthetically cool to be an 80 IQ pleb in Bitcoin. So that's when I backed off. I was like, wait a minute here. I got to go on the other side of the bell curve. But that is the issue again. So it isn't IQ in Bitcoin, but it also is. The bell curve is real, right? And as someone who works in Bitcoin media, that's always what you're trying to deal with. It is high IQs and low IQs. The same people who went, I don't trust any vaccine from a government, those kinds of people were, came to Bitcoin easily, and they're the, too long, don't care, too long, didn't read. Just give me the Bitcoin. This is all a scam. I don't trust it. And then the high IQ people who can see through a lot of this stuff. So Bitcoin media is always caught between this weird spot. I've always dealt with Bitcoin media. How do we get the normal people to get into Bitcoin? Well, I got bad news for you. The normal people, you can get the top of the curve, you can get the bottom, but it's going to keep squishing like this because people can hide in that NPC archetype of a follower, and the follower archetype continues to be really important. And oh, someone lost money in a scam, I don't want to be that person, so they go to the refuge of the crowds. And it's one of the last archetypes I think we're going to have to break in Bitcoin, and I suspect it will last to the very end, that one. So in the case of this guy, so right away, the self-reported IQ number is fake, right? So you got to understand he's a marketing guy, which is great. Market all you want. I don't have a problem with that. Now, the other part here is that Korea, and this is something I learned early on and really helped get me into Bitcoin. I lived there just before Bitcoin was created. And something I didn't know, and you can actually see proof of it online. Because Koreans come from a country that manipulates their currency, right? Because they come from a country that manipulates their currency. Everybody there day trades. Everybody. And I would go on dates with girls when I was young living there, and they would say, when are you trading your money? Why did you trade your money this week to US dollars? Because I would get paid in Korean money. And I'd said, what do you mean? I got paid this week. And they'd say, no, but the central bank is gonna debase our currency next week. Or sorry, it's gonna adjust it somehow next week. You should have waited. Like they knew the inside. And I didn't understand what people were talking about. I was like, what are you talking about? And they were already participating in the same way that Bitcoiners see that broken money is pushing people into meme coins and scams everywhere. And it's become normalized, the degeneracy of crypto and all that kind of stuff. That was already in Korea 20 something years ago. Everybody was an investor back then because they have capital controls. They have all these things that required a lot of participation, and they're ahead of the fiat apocalypse compared to America because of the debasement that's been going on forever over there. So you were dealing, and it's the reason why when I first started at CoinDesk, I created our original foreign language publication, still running to this day, CoinDesk Korea. Not because I just figured Korea was going to pop first. Before, and everyone's like, do it in Spanish. You should do Spanish is a big language. So if you thought like a fiat person, you would have said in 2016, 2017, when you're setting up the original CoinDesk foreign language entity, you'd have gone with Spanish. But I said, well, they're not rich enough. Like they don't trade money. They don't do any of that stuff. They get their shitty pesos and they buy their fucking tamales, and that's the end of it. Like what, they're not interested in Bitcoin. Maybe Argentina, but they're poor. So I get they get it, but there's not enough of them. So I said, forget it. Let's just go to Korea. These people are crazy about Bitcoin because they have all of these structural failings in their country. And it will be a good test market for us to figure out how to, translate and publish and all that stuff. It would be a nice contained little way to test our idea. And of course, it was great. It worked perfectly. It's still running. This was before anyone knew about the kimchi premium, that the cost of Bitcoin was higher in Korea than everywhere else because of the capital controls. All of that worked out in our favor. And we just sort of rode this idea of Korea being early for that reason. So Korea, like this guy, they have so normalized trading fiat degeneracy that they wouldn't even be able to recognize it. I mean, they day trade on television there as like a sport. They watch people day trade as sport in Korea because everybody does it. And the country is so far down the fiat apocalypse road that as an American colony, that, financial colony, that this guy with the high IQ, I mean, I don't think he's evil. I don't think that's what's going on here. I think he just can't see it. And it doesn't matter. Nakamoto consensus will protect us. He's obviously a little fucked up. But we don't have to worry too much about him, other than Bitcoiners will police the shit out of him and call him out and all of that. That's Nakamoto consensus working perfectly. But it doesn't surprise me that that's what you see in Korea. Korea is, because of all this, very nihilistic, and it's a normal byproduct of the fiat apocalypse.
I have the feeling I could sit down with you and record like a 15-hour podcast.
We should do it sometime, Robin. I will be in. I think anyway. I'll find out in a couple of days, by Friday, if I'm going next week to Lugano. So we'll see.
Oh, I will be in Lugano for sure. So maybe I'll see you, maybe not.
You can take that train. Easy ride.
Absolutely. Actually, I fly.
Okay. I took the train from Innsbruck to Munich once. Beautiful train.
Yeah, but it's a long ride from Vienna to Lugano. I think it's like 10 hours.
Yeah, it's got to be like this, right?
Something like that. Yeah. And flying, so I don't even... Is it I think it's Italy. Like I fly to Italy actually, and then take the train from Italy to Lugano. And this whole trip takes me 2-3 hours, maybe with delays, and maybe with going early, maybe 4 hours.
Yeah.
But it's not even half of what I need with train.
You have no choice. Yeah. It's a hard place to take a train in that middle of the continent,
Yeah, but it's crazy because I feel like it would be such a great, and I love taking the train actually, because you can sit there, you can work, like you take you have to take a reservation if you're ever in Austria as an American and you go on a train, like never just go in there because chances are like it's completely full and you don't get a seat, especially for all those subsidies now. So you definitely have a reservation, but if you have a reservation, you take a nice seat, like you take your laptop out and you just like sit there. So sometimes I even take like 2, 3, 4 hours more of travel with train just because I'm less stressed. Like I
same.
don't like being in the lanes of the planes and like going through security. Like I don't like that. But it is just not only faster, it's sometimes even like cheaper. I'm like, oh, it's faster and cheaper. It's kind of hard to say no to. But yeah, I have one question to ask each and every one of my returning guests, and the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance? And I guess for you, it will be very hard because you have learned so many different things.
What have I learned? That's a good question. Let me think about that for 1 second. I'm sure I've learned some amazing factoids in the past few months. Think maybe. Just give me a second. Trying to think of a good lesson. Ticks. Well, I guess yeah. I mean, that's a dark. I can take one from there. The reactions to Charlie Kirk, I guess, and it wasn't so much the reactions and how evil they were. And I think this is coming back to this archetype of the World War II consensus and all that stuff. How many people thought their opinions were normal? How many people didn't even imagine there would be consequences to celebrating murder in that way? And the surprise they had when they lost their jobs and were fired. And that was something that, I mean, I guess I conceptually knew that echo chambers could immerse you in a complete blinding. I mean, that's what we talked about all day here, is this blinding dichotomy of echo chambers and resistance to facts and all that stuff. I don't think I understood just how far and deep it actually went. And watching that happen was not a good lesson. It reaffirmed, I guess, what I already understood, echo chambers and their effect. But it made me realize that the fiat brainwashing is, even for someone who had great respect for its power and persuasive abilities of just repeating every day, repeating, how persuasive that can be. Even I was surprised at the not the violence. I anticipated sick reactions. It's the not even understanding, being surprised when you lost your job for saying, I just said someone deserved to die. What do you mean? So I think that was a lesson, a dark one, but a lesson nevertheless.
Yeah, I was shocked even by the reaction itself. Like seeing those videos was like, I got deeply like, it was not that I like watched him every day. I was not a huge fan, but like I watched some of his videos. I watched some of his podcasts, and like, you don't have I don't have a personal relationship with him, but you still like have some kind of relationship if you watch a guy. And so seeing this on TV, I was like, oh wait, he just like, this really hits you. So, like
no,
even though
I had a small relationship with him. It was not a big one, but we did the same job. You know, I run events and get speakers and talk about getting this speaker and this agenda, and that's what he did. So him and I talked in the old days a couple of times about speakers and coordinating this and that, and he followed me on Twitter and I followed him, and we talked about this stuff, and just I want that speaker, I'll get you this speaker, Bitcoin, this and that. And so it really affected me because there wasn't that big of a difference between us in terms of, I mean, his political involvement is second to none, of course, but I just mean the day-to-day stuff we did was not that different. And so it was it definitely affected me. Definitely. But I could see anyone who does content and anyone who does events would have had that same feeling.
Yeah, and it just hits you like, oh, this is an option. Like this is like you can do everything right, but like this is still like it hit me really hard. I was like, oh, like shit. And even me of being like so far away, like physically, like it's American, I'm in Europe, being so far away from like what he has achieved, being so different in what I do. Like I just like talk on the internet. I mean, to a certain extent, he also talks on the internet. But still I was like, oh, okay. Like that there's like pure evil that's just like does that. And then the reaction to it, like I couldn't handle it. I was like, I'll just log off Twitter. Like this is too much.
Yeah. No, it was dark stuff, man. Dark stuff.
But yeah, let's move on to the end routine of our podcast. The end routine of the podcast is always the same, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And to preface that, we talked about how many Satoshis you get for $1, and we kind of looked in the past. We looked in 2015, the same day, and back in the day, in 2015, for just $1, you got 400,000 Satoshis. Now you get for $1 only 870 something Satoshis, depending on the current exchange rate. Now the question is, another 10 years out, how many Satoshis do you think you will be able to get for $1?
I don't think there'll be US dollars in 10 years. So the number would be infinite. I think the US dollar is headed straight for food stamp. You might be able to get you might be able to take the intermediary, like what you can buy for food stamp, what you can buy for dollars, you can buy in Bitcoin. That I can see being possible. Like you can buy a hamburger with dollars, and then you can also buy the hamburger with Satoshis, but it won't be a straight conversion. I don't believe. I think that it can't be, it's going to be what it has to be. Fiat money wants to be government policy. It's going to straight up be government policy. All these people celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, a lot of these people can't be salvaged. There's not just going to be a light that goes off in their head. We're going to have an entire generation of broken-brained people that we're going to have to take care of. We're going to have to, we're about to enter a world as Bitcoiners where the stay humble thing is going to be very important. And we're going to run everything, and we're going to have to rise above any petty feelings we have about the sludge people and how broken their brains are. And we're going to have to try and find a way to take care of them, and preserve them for our own humanity, I suppose. For whatever reason, we're going to have to figure that out. And that is upon us really soon. It's a responsibility that I think we're ready for, but we're going to have to change how we see all of this stuff. And I think we will. So I don't imagine there will be an exchange rate. It's just not, it's not on the cards.
At some point you have to work for Bitcoin, I guess.
That's just it. Yeah, that's just it.
Really cool. Thank you so much, Nolan, for being on the podcast. Before I let you go, where can people find you and Roxham TV and all of the other things?
Great. Yeah, you can catch me every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I do the Great Awakening podcast or news show over at Roxham TV. So you can find us on X, Rumble, YouTube, all the Kick, all the different Twitch, all those different places. And you'll have the beautiful Chiron. If you want to ask comments, you come on to the Rumble one, and I take those comments because we do a lot of live comment reading. And you can find all that there. And we're 24/7 live on Roxham TV, so you can catch us anytime, any day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on, Nolan. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.